What does it mean to be a woman who desires? Not to be desired, not to be pretty, pleasing, graceful, modest, ladylike, but to desire actively, unapologetically, fully. Why does that idea still make society uncomfortable? Why does a woman who expresses longing, lust, agency, or even simple attraction suddenly become too much? Shameless, characterless, or dangerous? Welcome back to the Personal Lens, where we explore the political through the personal. And today we are stepping into one of the most policed, censored, and misunderstood realms of women's lives: desire. Female desire has always been treated like a ticking bomb. If men desire, it's natural. If women desire, it's moral decay. But what happens when we stop treating female sexuality as a threat and start seeing it as truth? Today, we unpack desire, shame, and the female gaze through feminist, queer, historical, psychological, and cultural lenses. Let's begin with a simple truth. Desire is political because who is allowed to want and who must suppress wanting tells you everything about a society. Patriarchy has always positioned men as active subjects of desire and women as passive objects. Men look, women are looked at. Men act, women appear. But the moment women step into the role of someone who wants, someone who looks back, someone who chooses, the entire structure trembles. Why? Because desire is power. When women desire, they no longer wait to be chosen. They choose. And that disrupts patriarchy's oldest script. Historically, across cultures, women were punished for wanting. In Victorian England, nymphomania was a medical diagnosis used on women who expressed sexual desire. In India, Manusmriti described women's sexuality as uncontrollable and needing male guardianship. Female desire isn't considered dangerous because it is dangerous. It's dangerous because it threatens male control. Now, the anatomy of shame, how desire was turned into sin. Shame is the oldest weapon used against female desire. Think about it. Girls are rarely taught about pleasure, only about fear, danger, respectability, and consequences. Boys are warned about distraction. Girls are warned about ruin. Shame is passed down in whispers. Good girls don't think like that. Decent girls don't behave like that. She's too fast. She's asking for it. Characterless. And thus, shame becomes a second skin. But where does this shame come from? Religion and morality. Every major religion has narratives policing women's desire. Eve eating the apple, Ahalya being punished, Medusa being turned into a monster after a sexual assault. Desire is framed as dangerous when it comes from women. Family honor and collective control. Female sexuality is tied to family reputation. A woman's desire doesn't belong to her, it belongs to her caste, her community, her bloodline. Now, the Madonna whore dichotomy. Women are either pure or promiscuous, with nothing in between. A man's desire is an identity, whereas a woman's desire is a liability. Then comes internalization of the gaze. When women constantly observe themselves through the imagined eyes of men and society, self surveillance becomes instinct. Desire becomes something to hide, not feel. This shame doesn't arise naturally, it's constructed, rehearsed, and enforced. And it works only because women are trained to believe that their sexuality is never fully theirs. But let's talk about the female gaze and seeing beyond objectification. We often talk about the male gaze, but what does the female gaze look like? The female gaze is not simply women looking at men. It's not objectification reversed. The female gaze is about seeing with empathy instead of entitlement, desire that is relational, not possessive, aesthetic appreciation without dehumanization, a longing that acknowledges mutual vulnerability, pleasure that's emotional, not only visual. You see it in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Brooklyn, Lapata Ladies, or in queer art where desire isn't domination but recognition. When women desire, truly desire, it's less about owning and more about connecting. And that's what makes the female gaze radical. It disrupts the idea that sexuality must be hierarchical. In the female gaze, there is no conqueror, no conquest, only curiosity, intimacy, and reciprocity. And patriarchy hates this because it dismantles the power imbalance that fuels male entitlement. But why is female sexuality seen as dangerous? Let's break down this core question. Reason 1, patriarchy depends on controlling women's bodies. If women could desire freely, they could choose freely. Partners, relationships, sexual autonomy, independence. That threatens patriarchal lineage, inheritance, and social order. Reason 2, female pleasure challenges male authority. When women understand their pleasure, they stop accepting duty based sexual roles. They stop tolerating bad marriages, coercion, or loveless lives. Reason 3, women's desire breaks gender scripts. Desire is active, agency is active, choice is active, and women aren't supposed to be active. They are supposed to be obedient, waiting, grateful. Reason 4, female queerness disrupts compulsory heterosexuality. Adrian Rich's idea of compulsory heterosexuality explains why queer desire, especially between women, is erased because it escapes male control entirely. Women loving women is treated as deviant not because it is, but because it takes men out of the equation. Reason 5, society fears what it cannot regulate. Female desire is unpredictable, uncontainable, ungovernable. Anything ungovernable becomes a threat. That is why women are taught to fear their bodies instead of understanding them. Let's now come to media, cinema, and the politics of policing desire. From Bollywood to Assamese cinema, female desire is framed as cautionary. The desiring woman is vampish, like in older Hindi films. She is punished socially, romantically, sometimes violently. Good heroines blush. Bad heroines flirt. Movies rarely show women wanting unless the plot humiliates or destroys them by the end. Take Lipstick Under My Burqa. Banned initially because it was too bold, too real, too dangerous. But dangerous for whom? See, patriarchy thrives on women not seeing themselves as desiring beings. So any representation that does otherwise is treated like a threat. Meanwhile, men in films pursue, chase, stalk, claim, and it's called romance. When women pursue, suddenly it's indecent. A woman who desires breaks more than just rules. She breaks silence. She breaks the idea that her sexuality is a commodity controlled by family, caste, religion, husband, or community. Her desire says, I'm human, I feel, I long, I choose, I exist for myself. Think of Indian women choosing to date publicly, women wearing clothes without shame, women writing erotic poetry, queer women loving openly, women demanding sexual rights in marriage, women masturbating, women refusing to apologize for pleasure, women rejecting purity politics, women refusing shame. Desire becomes rebellion when a woman stops apologizing for her body because the moment she claims agency over her desire, she claims agency over her own life. Let's peer through the queer lens and look at desire outside the binary. Queer theory teaches us something revolutionary. Desire is fluid, not fixed. Desire is political because identity is pullist. Desire is expansive when gender is expansive. When we explore desire through queer lenses, we stop defining sexuality as moral or immoral. We stop assuming heteronormativity. We recognize that pleasure is not sinful. We acknowledge that shame was taught, not born. Queer desire challenges the idea that sexuality must serve reproduction or patriarchy. It proves that desire can exist for joy, intimacy, connection, and expression, and not just duty. And moving on, let's discuss how does shame shape women's everyday lives. Let's turn to the personal because desire is never abstract. It shows up in small everyday ways. The girl adjusting her dupatta every 5 minutes. The woman deleting her search history. The married woman afraid to admit she has fantasies. The queer woman hiding her partner. The college girl covering her laughter after a compliment. The woman who feels guilty for wanting sex. The woman who feels ashamed for not wanting sex. The mother who hides pleasure as if it's a crime. The widow who is told she doesn't have sexual rights. The single woman whose desire is treated like desperation. The divorced woman whose desire is treated like moral decay. All of these are political because everything a woman feels is shaped by what she is allowed to feel. So, how do women reclaim desire without shame? Naming the shame. When you name a feeling, it stops owning you. Understanding pleasure as your right. Pleasure is not a privilege, it's a basic part of human experience. Rejecting respectability politics. Respectability was designed to control behavior, not protect dignity. Unlearning internalized misogyny, especially the belief that female sexuality must be hidden, judged, or feared. Honoring queer and feminist frameworks because they liberate everyone, not just women. Seeing yourself through your own gaze, not through the male gaze. Not through society, definitely not through shame, but your own gaze. A gaze that is kind, curious, unapologetic, and honest. Let me leave you with this final thought. A woman who desires is not dangerous, but a society that fears her is. Because a woman who desires is a woman who knows herself, her needs, her imagination, her body, her boundaries, her longing, her truth. And nothing is more revolutionary than a woman who knows her truth. This isn't just about sexuality. It's about power, agency, freedom, and dignity. It's about reclaiming something that was always yours but never freely given to you. So don't smother it with shame. Look at it, name it, own it. Because desire in its purest form is not sin, it is selfhood, and that in itself is powerful. This has been The Personal Lens, exploring the political through the personal, one truth we were never meant to name. Thank you so much for being with me. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want us to keep having these honest, uncomfortable, but necessary conversations. Let us know your thoughts at the email given in the description. Until then, deconstruct the narrative and reclaim your worth. Do not forget to keep looking through the personal lens.